Hi, this is Nancy Rolfsma with Quilting with Nancy. Thank you for joining me for a new project. This project is the LeMoyne star. And when I do a LeMoyne star, I want set-in seams. Now, there are other techniques out there for making LeMoyne stars, and if they work for you, you go for it. But what I like about the set-in seams is I believe it is actually quicker to make, but more importantly, there are no extra seams involved. So for instance, some patterns will have, you'll cut half square triangles, so you'll have a seam here, you'll have a seam here. And with the set in seams technique that I use, there will be none of those extra seams. I also have come up with a pretty precise way of doing this. I hope you appreciate it. So first, let's take a look at where you can get some supplies. So the supplies can be available at firesidequilts.com. So you can check out that website. That's my friend Laura that lives up on the north side of Grand Rapids. And if you have any questions about which supplies, then you could always contact me via email at quiltingwithnancy@gmail.com. The first and most important supply I want to be sure that you get is the spray sizing. The first picture here is the Magic Quilting and Crafting Spray. It's been out for about 5 years. They used to have an older version in an aerosol can, but this they've put a spray nozzle on, and it is fabulous. Sizing is the same idea as when you're using Mary Ellen's Best Press. And I like Mary Ellen's Best Press, but I don't like their nozzle. This has the high quality liquid and a great nozzle. I want you to then take the second product. This is Material Magic. This one might be a little bit harder to find, but you can take about 1/10 of, so when you're filling up that bottle, fill it up 1/10 of it with the Material Magic. And if you do that, your fabrics get stiffer faster, and that's what we want. You want your fabrics all to be pre-sized, to be really stiff, about as stiff as a piece of copy paper. The fabrics I'm using were sent to me by Timeless Treasures. This is one of their Tonga Batik collections. And this will be available November 2025 at many shops and at firesidequilts.com. The other ironing supplies I want you to have is a 4x4 wool pressing mat. Now you might already have one of these that's larger, and you could use that. It's just that it's going to be kind of cumbersome unless you have a nice big space to work with it. But you'll see how I use that, and these are not very expensive. And then the Clover Mini Iron. I use my Clover Mini Iron for so many different things, but I don't use the little stand that it comes with. Instead, I put my Clover Mini Iron in a large mug. That way I'm sure it's not going to burn down. So let's start by doing some cutting and some explanation of the LeMoyne stars. Now, I design completely in electric quilt. I've been doing this for years. I teach classes. If you are interested in learning more about electric quilt, I do have membership on my channel. And at the designer level membership, you would join me once a month for an hour-long session on Zoom. And then you're also able to see the last 50 some that I have made. So if you're thinking about EQ, it's a really good thing to do because learning by yourself can be a little bit tough. In the book that I have, I am giving you instructions for making 9 different sizes. We've got a 4-inch block, which he's just so cute. I love him. The 5-inch, and these are finished sizes. A 6-inch, a 7, an 8, and a 9, but the 9 is the one that is in the quilt behind me, but that's the size we will be making today. This one is a 10-inch, an 11-inch, getting a little bit bigger, and then the 12-inch block. So I made all these samples, but it wasn't really as clear cut as all that. In the process of trying to make sure the sizes were all correct, because something about the LeMoyne star, because it's like from here to here to here, I don't even think that's 1/3 of that, although it looks like it might be. I think this is smaller. And the sizes with electric quilt are close, but not always close enough. It's almost like it should be done in centimeters, but since I'm from America, I don't know how to use centimeters. So for instance, I made one of the 4-inch blocks that first came out 4 1/4. Then I tried it again with different measurements. It came out to 4 1/4 again. I'm just telling you the truth. This one for the 5 came out 2 3/4 first. Then I had a 5 1/2 one that was supposed to be 6, I think. I had a 7 3/4, another 7 3/4. It's like, I know I did the sizes different, but it ended up the same size. Then it got bigger, 8 1/4. And then when I was trying to do the 10-inch one, it came out to 9 3/4. And then the 11-inch one came out to 10 3/4. So I changed some of those sizings in the pieces that you cut so that it will be more accurate. One of the reasons I chose the 9-inch block is because the 9-inch block was the one block that I printed out the sizes from Electric Quilt, and it was actually correct. Everything worked out fine. So we're going to start by doing some cutting. So get these out of the way. There. So this is going to be my practice cut. I just want to show you a little bit with a piece that I'm not actually going to be using. Now, before I do the cutting, because I like to do power cutting, and I'll explain that when we're doing our little demo here. Let's scooch this over here. There. I like to use glow tape. Now, glow tape is a product from OmniGrid that it comes in 3 rolls, and honestly, you could gift 2 of the rolls to your friends because 1 roll will last you a really long time. So those are available at Fireside, and then you're going to put them on your ruler. And in this case, for the 9-inch block, we need strips to be cut 2 3/8 inches. So if we're looking here, I've put the tape, here is 2 3/8 to the line. Then the next line is an additional 2 3/8 inches, so I can do a little bit of power cutting. We'll also be doing one on the diagonal, the 45-degree. Let me show you a close-up of that, because when we're doing our design, we will be cutting on the 45-degree angle, and having those preset on your ruler makes the process a whole lot easier. So we're going to start cutting. Sorry for my messy mat. I do lots of painting and stuff like that. So I'm going to take my fabric. I've got it folded already. I didn't actually pre-size this ones, but the ones I'm using I will. I've taken it and folded it twice. So I first folded it long ways. You can't really see it because I don't have quite enough space here. So it's folded in half, and this is for cutting with the fabric. Then I'm going to bring the selvage edge up to about a 1/2 inch from the top, and that is so that I can see it. And you can't really tell because this is the same color selvage, but if you take it right to the fold, you might go past the fold and not even realize that you have done that. So I'm only cutting an 11-inch piece of fabric. I don't even need to use a 24-inch ruler. This ruler is 6 inches by 12 inches. I like it because it's small, and sometimes I don't have that much room on my cutting table. I'm going to line up a horizontal line of the ruler down at the bottom. Oops, sorry. And so this is the seam, where I'm lining it up on the horizontal line. Hold your ruler a little bit from the edge, halfway. Oops, I moved a smidge. And cut. I am using OmniGrid rulers because they are my favorites. I love OmniGrid rulers. Now I'm going to take that piece that has a straight edge on my right side, keeping in mind if you are left-handed, you're going to be doing it kind of over here, and I don't quite know how to do that because I'm not left-handed. Then I'm going to turn it around so now my selvages are at the bottom and the fold is at the top. Now for power cutting, instead of lining this up at 2 3/8 and cutting and then doing it again and again, instead with this ruler I'm going to go to 4 3/4. Okay? I can see up here that I am horizontally correct, meaning that the fold is on the horizontal of the ruler, and I cut. Clean cut. Then I just slide it over. Now, if you want to know more about this power cutting thing, you might want to take a look at some of my older videos, like the Learning to Quilt. I cover it quite a bit there. And cut. So now I have two 2 3/8 inch strips. Now I'm going to use actually the Tonga batik strips that are pre-sized. One thing you can tell is if your fabrics are pre-sized correctly, you can go like this and they'll pretty much stand up. So you can tap them like a deck of cards, give them a little fold and they will stand up. If I try that with the unsized pieces, actually it stands pretty good, but it doesn't get me a good crease here. I wonder how easily it'll fall. Yep, this one holds up a little better. Because it's really, really stiff. And that's what you want. Not just for this project. Honestly, I do it for a lot, but I really like it for this project. So now we're going to go to our sewing machine. Now I'm at my sewing machine and I need to set it up before I can start. I'm using a 70 Microtex needle, which is by far the best needle for working with batiks and any of the other cotton fabrics because it's very, very sharp. I'm using an open toe applique foot, so it's got this opening here, as opposed to what I would maybe call your normal foot that has that plastic in the middle. It makes it a little bit harder to see when you're turning these set-in seams. An open toe foot will make it much easier. And now we need to set up for our seam allowance. I've come up with a technique for improving your seam allowance using some strips that have been cut 1.5 inches. But the first thing I want to do is set my seam guide. So this is the little seam guide. They are seam guides from Guidelines for Quilting. This is my favorite tool to use for getting the seams just right. And then I also will be using a new little sewing gauge that my friend Gina has made. So this sewing gauge we will use for marking our 1/4 inch on the corners of our LeMoyne star. It does have a 1/2 inch here for doing easy sashings techniques when we need the 1/2 inch. It's got a 2 inch and some other measurements too. But for this, we're going to use that little hole to set our needle in the right position. I'm going to take and move my needle over. You see it's moving to the right. Now, if you cannot do this, you can still use the tool. Just lay your needle in and then lay this down. But what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take and lower the needle right into that hole. And with an electronic machine, you can't move the needle at the same time that you're moving the foot. So I have set mine to where I think it should be, but it's a little bit too close, so I need to move it over. So I'm going to raise up my needle again and move my needle back to maybe 2.8. And I test this quite a bit. I always think I know what I'm doing. You'd think I should think I know what I'm doing. Now I'll put the foot down. Nope, I need to move it. Oh, I did have it. I went the wrong way. I want to move it so the guide is just so that I'm able to make it not, I don't want my seam guide to be on the feed dogs. So let's lift the foot, lift the presser foot, move it back to where I was. Oops, a little closer to where I thought I needed to be. I'm going to go to 3.5 on this machine. Every machine is different. I have a 9mm foot, so that can make a difference too. There. Now the seam guide and the foot are stacked right on top of each other. I can now take my guideline and peel off the sticky part, okay? And then set it right next to the foot, right there, all right? Now lift the presser foot and the foot and take it out. Now with this on, oops, there's a little bit of tape left over. This is going to stay for a long time, but I'll show you a tip for making it last even longer. Take some Scotch tape. This is something you should have in your household junk drawer, right? And lay that down without the thread, sorry for the wiggle there, on the seam guide. All right, so that means that when you're using pins, it'll just slide right up and it won't bump into it. And if it bumps into it without the tape, it seems to want to kind of peel it up. Then take a seam ripper and take off this first part here. So I'm just kind of cutting it there. Now you might have already what you think is your perfect solution for finding your scant 1/4 inch, and if you do, more power to you. This works for me, and I've been doing it this way for years. Now, because I made that cut, the first time's a little harder, but I can take off. Okay, if I take this off, it makes it easier. Then I can lift off my bobbin top. Oops, sorry for the wiggly camera again. So then I can do any other thing I need to do with my bobbin and put it back in, and my seam guide is still there instead of having to take it on and off. So for this little test, I'm going to sew these black and white strips together. So using a little leader first, just like I always do. Then I'm going to take, let's work with the needle in the down position. I'm going to take 2 blacks. No, I'm going to take 1 black and 2 whites. All right, and I'm going to sew those together. Let's place my seams together. It's a little hard to move around the camera, but I think you'll give me a little grace and be okay with the wiggly camera. See, now this looks a little bit small to me, but I will double check it. So off onto a ender, cut the ender off, cut the leader off. Now the leader, ender, has become my leader. Just going to press this with my fingers for a moment, then get my second piece. Line that up and sew that seam. Go off onto an ender. Whoops, there she is. My machine does have a thread cutter, but when I use the thread cutter, I can't use leaders and enders, and I love using leaders and enders. And now this. Now, because I've done the spray sizing on this, these actually hold pretty well, even just by finger pressing. But what we are going to really do is press with our Clover mini iron. So I'm just going to take it here and press it this way. Now my intention here is to press both of these out, so now I can see what size this black strip is. If all has gone according to plan and my seam allowance is okie dokie, this should be 1 inch. Hey, it's not very bad. It is a little bit too small, just a tad too small here. And I am going to then move my needle a little bit more to the left, so my seam allowance will be a little bit bigger. Now you can do this yourself, and you might want to actually do another test until you have what you think is the most accurate scant 1/4 inch you can make. All right. Now we're going to take our strips and sew them together. So I've got these 2 that were pre-stiffened. There we go. I'm going to put them right sides together. These ones were cut 2 3/8 inches. And now I'm going to sew them together using my guide to be sure that everything lines up. I like placing my finger right on top of the guide so that the fabric can only go under my finger. It cannot go over the guide, and that means I can sew, pretty quickly. Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention that your stitch length for the LeMoyne stars needs to be a little bit shorter than normal, because these seams will be pressed open, and that makes it harder to see the stitching threads. I am using a 50 weight cotton, and because this is purple, I actually would use a gray, but I used a white just so that you guys will be able to see my stitches a little bit better. So at the end of the strip, sewing off onto the ender. Now I'm going to take this to my real ironing board that is off camera and press it and meet you back at the front table. So back at my cutting surface, I have my strip. And what I meant by I went to the ironing to change that, I don't know what happened with the lights there, but I actually like to press it with a hot steam iron to get everything really, really flat. Now I am going to lay it down, and I'm going to set it so the stitching line is right here at the bottom. It can open up that way, right? Now I'm going to use my ruler that has those markings on it. So this is my 45-degree ruler. I'm going to take it all the way to my right side. I'm going to line it up at the 45 degree and cut off that angle. Okay. Now I'm going to spin this around. There. Now my 45 degree is on my left side, and I'm going to keep my ruler just like it was, exactly in the position that it was for the first cut. Now the stitching line is at the top, and I'm going to line this up at the 45 degree angle here, and in this case for a little power cutting at the, what is that, 4 3/4. And make a cut. Then slide it on down. Line that up again. And cut. So now I have 2 diamond pairs, and I need to make 2 more cuts. If you have a full strip of fabric, this was not a full strip, this I think was a little bit more like a half of a strip. If you have a full strip, you might be able to get 2 blocks worth. So maybe 8 of the diamonds, well, depending on what size diamond you're doing too. If you're making a little 4-inch LeMoyne star, yeah, you could probably get 20 of them because they're really, really small. All right. So for demonstration purposes, voila, I have my diamonds cut. All right. Now I'm going to go and get my spinning mat for cutting my background fabrics. My background fabrics for this, for the setting squares, need to be 5 1/4. And I see that I am, oops, let me line them up again, click, click, because it's been spray sized. These will be the setting squares. So lining that up at 5 1/4. Oh, I'm sorry, not 5 1/4, 5 1/8, because I'd already cut it. And I was like, oh no, it's not right. So 5 1/8, I cut that. Now I can spin my mat. I do love these little OmniGrid spinning mats. And I can square off one side. Lift my ruler, spin the mat. Now measure 5 1/8 inches. These, I'm sorry, these are not the squares. These are the triangles. They're cut from a large square because now we need to create the setting triangle by cutting these on the diagonal twice. 1, then spin your mat, and 2, just lining up point to point. So now I have enough for 2. I cut, these were doubled up. So I've got 8 diamonds. Next, I need to cut my squares. And for the squares, I need to cut, I think it was 3 1/8 inches. I can't remember. I've got to go to my little book. In the booklet you're going to get, it's going to have yardage for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different size quilts, and the cutting instructions and setting triangles for all the different sizes depending on what size. And I'm doing the 9-inch. So I need a 3 1/4 for my 4 setting blocks. So 1, 2, 3 1/4. And to make things go a little bit faster, I'll fold this. My raw edge is on my right side, right here. I will square that off, lining up a horizontal line on my ruler. Spin my mat, 1, 2, 3 1/4. Yeah, math is hard, I know. That gets me 4 squares, and then in this case I have an extra piece. Now it is, this one, nope, this one's a little shy of 3 1/4, but I gotta tell you, I save all the little scraps. I've got a little pile of the scraps like this, because there are so many times that I will run short of one little square, and I'll take those scraps and piece them together. And so I might have a seam in the middle of the square. Pressing it open, nobody will ever know that it's there. So now I can take my squares and my diamonds back to my sewing machine. Oh, my triangles, my squares, there they go. And my diamonds, that's what I was talking about. So now we are back to my camera that can show you some really good close-ups of what we are going to do. With this, we will be using a new tool that my friend Gina has just made. And this tool has a really great marking. It's kind of hard to see. I'll show you in a close-up. But there is a 1/4 inch from here to here, scant 1/4 of an inch, and a scant 1/4 of an inch from here to here. And that's what we're going to use to make the turning point on our squares and diamonds. So starting with, I'll show you 2 different ways that you can do this. The first way, actually I'll show you 3 different ways. The first way using this tool is to line it up. So here is the inside of the triangle. Take and line the ruler up so that you're a 1/4 of an inch from here and a 1/4 of an inch from there, and mark it. Now I am using a friction fine liner, and that means that it will be able to be removed, and I'm going to put a dot right there. Now sometimes it can be hard to see the dot, which is why I've come up with another technique. There's also another, if you don't have that seam guide that Gina has made, the other idea is to take your regular ruler, place your regular ruler at one of the inch lines on the 1/4 of an inch, and then put your dot right there. You know what, it might be easier if we did it this way. Okay, let's do it this way, because then you can see the 1/4 inch a little bit better. Yep, so right there is going to be a 1/4 of an inch from here and a 1/4 of an inch from here. Now, this is the way that I've been doing it almost always, but now I am using the seam guide. Instead of just putting a dot, I'm going to put a physical pin, and I'll show you what I mean by that, but I got to first take you back to your diamonds. Now with your diamonds, in my pile I have a seam ripper. There it is. There, all right. You need to take on the inside of the diamond. So this is what I would call the point, the outside. I guess technically it's the inside point, and that would be the outside. But either way, it's at the, not the pointed end, but at the top of the pointed end. I don't know what else to call it. And you're going to take out 4 or 5 stitches. And these stitches are 2.0 stitch length. So that doesn't look like quite enough. So that's why I say 4 or 5. Got to catch it. Right there. All right. So I've released those stitches. And let me do that again on one of our other diamonds. I'll do this one on the other color. Maybe you'll see it better. So there's 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 3 stitch, 4 stitch, and 5 stitch. So depending on your machine, it might be a little more or a little less. Now we need to press those seams open. So by doing the sewing and the cutting of the diamonds when they're already sewed, it makes it a lot easier than cutting individual diamonds and then sewing those diamonds together. When they're just cut from a strip, it just makes it so easy. So that's how I have pressed the seam. There we go, pressed it open. And now I've taken out that little bit of a seam, so now I will be able to do the turn. All right, so starting with one of the ones that we did a point on. So this is the point that we drew, and I'll show you how I actually have been doing it for years and years and years. I take this, and my point is right there. Right? I'm going to line it up on the edge, but then I can still just see the point and pin it. Okay? So that's how I've been doing it for years, and I would explain it that imagine there's a pin there and you're butting right up to the pin. And then I got to thinking, why not put a pin there? Not do any dot drawing at all, but instead take your piece, take your 1/4 inch guide, put it on the inside corner of the triangle, and then put a pin right there. Oops, if I use a red pin, it's easier to see. There. So that is my mark. It is secured to my mat. Now I'm going to take my diamond, open it up, and this is on the wrong side of the diamonds. This is the right side of the triangle. And I'm going to literally just butt it right up next to the pin. Boom! It's next to the right-hand edge, and it's butt right next to the pin. That will be my turning place, and it seems to work great. Now, it is really important, again, that I mentioned that you have spray sized these pieces so that they are very stiff. Let's go sew this. So at my machine, I have my open toe foot on, I have my stitch length a little bit smaller, I have my seam guide ready to go for a scant 1/4 inch. I'm going to start sewing on that first point. Again, this is the wrong side of that diamond, but it's a batik, so you might not be able to tell. And I keep my pin in place. Now, some of you might be freaking out about that, but what you can do with the pin extending, these are clover glass head pins, the ball of the pin extends past the seam guide, so it's not being raised up off the surface. It's very, very flat. So I can slowly go over it and sew until my needle is off the fold of the first diamond fabric. Lifting the foot, I release the right-hand side of the diamond and spin it. And I spin it until the bottom triangle is butting right up to the seam guide. It just came around and went tuk, right there next to the seam guide. I'm going to hold that in place, and now with my left hand, spin the block. Spin, 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 spin until it's back in place. And most of the designs have where you've got a little bit bigger triangle than diamond, and that's what you want. But do line it up on the right-hand side and sew to the end. All right, let's go back and do that again. So starting with the diamond, we took out the stitches. We're going to press this open. Yep, right there, I think. It's actually not that hard, but sometimes, you get fumbly fingers. There. Press that open. And I usually like to press it open from the back side, the seam side, then flip it over to the right side, and make sure that I haven't left a crease in that fold. I want it to be very, very flat right there. And because I use that small stitch length, you cannot see the stitches that are holding it together. Now I'm going to take another one of the diamonds, lay that down, right sides up, place my 1/4 inch on the inside corner of the triangle. So I'm a 1/4 inch from the bottom and the right, and put my pin straight down. Then take my diamond, so it's going to be like this. You're going to flip the right-hand side diamond, whether or not you're right or left-handed, you're still going to do this the same. Flip over the right-hand side and line that up. So now we're looking at the wrong side of the blue fabric, the right side of the triangle fabric. Take another pin and pin it in place. Then you can take this pin out and go to your machine. And I would typically chain piece all 4 at the same time. We don't have to do that because with the magic of television, we'll have some other options. Sewing over the pin, nice and slow, until the needle is off the blue fabric. It is not touching the blue fabric at this point. Lift the presser foot, take out your pin, lay your diamond down, spin it. So now the bottom fabric is lined up with the seam guide. Hold it in place with your right hand as you spin the diamond around. This works also for lone stars. When you're doing those big ones, it's just a little bit bigger, so it seems to be a little bit harder, but it is the same idea. Right? Then we're going to take an ender and cut that off. Now we're going to press these. Now you can press these with your big iron if you would like to, but I'm going to show you how to press them with just the little clover iron because you can see it. All right. For the triangle sections, you want to press it toward the diamonds. So press it from the front side. And be sure that you, again, don't leave a crease in the fabric. So I'm making sure that that seam is completely pushed over on the both sides. All right. Then I'll do my other one. And so from the back side, you can see this diamond triangle is pressed toward the diamond star points. All right. So let's do another one. Press him up. Being sure I don't have a crease. And I've pressed it completely over. There. Now we need to connect, and we would have made 4 of these, but the next step is to just make a half of one of these. So we're going to put these together. So flipping it over, right sides together. And you want to match up the seam. So you want this seam to match up with that seam. So very carefully line it up and then fold it and make sure. So I got to shift that over a little bit. And I must also recommend, oops, let me double check that. I'm not quite sure. There, that you do not use solid fabrics when you're doing this any techniques, honestly, because the solid fabrics will show any boo-boo that you make, anything that you've made that is not quite right, quite lined up. You'll see it with those solid fabrics. With printed fabrics, you don't see it as easily. So back to the machine. We are now going to sew with a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance again. Right over that pin. Want to make sure my ender is handy. Let's pull this pin out a little bit farther so it goes past the seam guide. And then onto my ender. And back to pressing. Take the leader off. Now I'm going to press this new seam together, but before I do that, I have to again release the first 4 or 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that come in? Yep, that came in far enough. That might have been 5. Okay. Open that up and press the seam open. Now this is where you will see if your pinning to match that intersection actually worked. And I'll show you for, oops, got to get that open. Take my time, quit rushing. Okay. I'm going to flip it over, press it from the front side. And darn, that's a good one. That intersection, I'm going to try and bring it up a little bit closer so you can see it. I hope I'm centered. Do you see how they all intersect together? Now that is not always going to happen, but we're going to call this one a good day because it happened. All right? You're going to make 2 of these pieces, and then you're going to add a square. All right? Same technique. Set it down on one of the corners of the square, line up your seam guide, put your pin in, take your diamond sections, unfold the right, so it'll be, this is the idea, so this piece is going to be flipped over onto the square. Line it up so the fold of the purple fabric is butting right to the pin, and I'm lining it up straight. Then I secure that and go to my machine. All right, at the machine, we want to make sure that it's all lined up at the top and everything. And I don't usually put a second pin on in this, but you can. Again, sewing over the pin, nice and slow. Yep, went over that. And sewing until I'm off the purple fabric. I am completely off the purple fabric now. Lift your presser foot, spin it around until now the square is lined up with the seam guide. Hold the square in place and spin. Okay. Lining up my square and triangles together. It's lining up my left-hand side and sew. And now we'll press this. Now this one is pressed a little differently. For this, the squares will be pressed toward the square. So the first time we press the triangles toward the diamond. Now we are going to press the diamonds to the square. I used to press it over top this way so that everything was going toward the diamonds. I kind of liked the look of that, but it made a very bulky seam here. So recently I started instead pressing toward the squares. All right. So that's pressed toward the square. Then I'll kind of turn it and press this one toward the square. And it makes right here this little bit I don't know what to call this little bit. This little bit hangs out. So it is hanging out from the purple and the blue. It's just a little tab. And that's just what it is when you're going to press it that way. So from the front side, I want to again make sure I have no creases. And that is pressed beautifully. So now I'm going to make another one of these and bring you back to that technique. So I have 2 of the sides for the star built, and now we need to connect this line. And when you're sewing this seam, what is important is that you find the intersection of the diamonds here and here and pin that. That's how you're going to get the most precise seaming. So with this turned over, I like to do it so I have them right sides together. From the back of the top one, I'm going to put my pin right through the intersection. Okay, so it's through the intersection. Then I flip it up and then bring that same pin into the intersection of the one below. Straighten that pin out, nice and straight. Then get a second pin and go, if you go on top of these seams, it seems to get so bulky. So I kind of slide my pin under the seam until it hits the middle line, and then I put a pin in there to secure it, right? So when I am sewing this, I'm going to line up all my edges, and I'm going to start my 1/4 of an inch here, sew all the way down, and when I come to the intersection, I want to be on the intersection or to the right of the intersection. So you're really aiming for the intersection, but sometimes you might want to go a little bit scanter to the right and then sew all the way off. When you do that, you have completed, 90% of the block, and you'll just have to then add the last 2 squares. After I add those squares, then I'm going to give the whole quilt another misting of sizing to kind of stiffen and everything, keep my seams where I wanted them. So the back should look like this. Nice and square, everything staying nice and flat. Now we're going to trim that block. So here is my block. It is looking pretty spiffy, if I say so myself. Now keep in mind, this is the 9-inch finished block, so we want to try to trim it to 9.5 inches. So this is my 9.5 inch ruler, and I'm going to test it with this, but I am not going to cut it with this. I'm going to look at this and I'm going to go, yeah, it is a little bit bigger at the top and the sides. I've got just a smidge that I can trim off. The problem with using a square ruler to trim off the edges when you have points on the edges is you might lose some of the points of the star, and we have worked way too hard to be okay with that. So I'm looking at this, I'm kind of analyzing it, saying, hey, I think it's going to work. It's going to be really, really close. But I'm going to trim it using a regular straight ruler. And I'm only going to trim one side at a time. So I've laid this ruler down, and I'm going to line it up so the point of the star is 1/4 of an inch. So the 1/4 inch mark of my ruler is on the point there and on the point there. And trim off that little bit. Then spin the mat. Do the same thing. On the point, on the point. Oops, don't move. Spin the mat. Do this side, on the point, on the point. And another spin. Now by doing this, I have not lost my points, and I may or may not have actually trimmed it to that 9.5 inch size. So let's get our other ruler out and see what we got. How close is it? It's still a little bit big up here, but I would rather have my block be a little bit big than to have lost my point. So I'm going to keep it a little bit big. Next time when we get together, I will show you how you put in all of the sashings and cornerstones on point and the setting and corner triangles, all right? And so I'll show you how you can ease this into the sashings. Yeah, the black's a little bit big, but more importantly, I've got points and I want to keep those points. I truly believe this technique is the most accurate way to make a LeMoyne star, and I hope you agree. Now, the one thing I did not show you yet was that little ruler, a little close-up. So this is what we call Gina's little ruler. It's going to actually, she actually cuts them and lasers them, um, and it's going to say Quilting with Nancy on it when I actually sell them. But these are available only on my website, and my website is www.quiltingwithnancy.com. And if you go to that website, you can order the book, the booklet, and the guide if you would like. Now, the booklet is only about 12 pages, so you can purchase either the hard copy or the e-version of it, whichever you like. And as I mentioned, that booklet is going to have the sizes for cutting your pieces to make LeMoyne stars in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 9 different sizes and the yardage and layouts for, I think it was 6 different quilts, all the way up to a queen size, a smaller version of this one, and then all the way up to a queen size. So there is a lot more information in the book. But the next time we get together in part 2, we will be doing the setting, the on point setting with it. I'll put the borders on it, and then part 3, I will be quilting this quilt. I hope you enjoyed this. These are beautiful fabrics. Again, these are timeless treasures, Tonga batiks. They will be available in shops November 25, so you can either call your favorite shop and say, ooh, 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 I saw these beautiful batiks. Be sure you order them. And if your shop doesn't, that's all right. I know where you'll be able to get it. You'll be able to get it at firesidequilts.com. She is picking up the entire line, and we will make a kit. If you want us to make a kit for a queen size, you just let me or Laura know, and we'll make up a kit for you with all of these beautiful Tonga fabrics. So I will see you next time for part 2.